Story number 1. Haunted house on Christmas night. I was the one who first decided our family should move into that old house on Maple Street. It was early December when we first set foot inside. The chill of winter already settling in the air. My wife, Emily, our 2 kids, Lily and Jack, and I were eager to start fresh after selling our old home in the suburbs of Chicago. The house had all the makings of a perfect Christmas haven: spacious rooms, a garden blanketed in snow, and twinkling lights adorning every corner. From the very beginning, there was an unsettling feeling that lingered in the air. The first few nights were mostly uneventful, but as Christmas approached, strange occurrences began to unfold. Each evening, as we gathered around the grand Christmas tree in the living room, I couldn't shake the sensation that something was watching us. At first, I dismissed it as mere imagination, the result of stress from the move and the excitement of the season. But then the disturbances started. Decorations would be moved inexplicably overnight. One morning, I found the ornaments scattered across the floor, the garlands twisted into unnatural shapes. Lights that were perfectly strung the night before would be frayed and tangled by morning. It was as if an unseen force was intent on disrupting our festive preparations. The most disturbing signs, however, appeared in our photographs. Every time we took a family picture with the Christmas tree, there were dark, indistinct shadows lurking in the background. At first, they were faint and easy to dismiss, but over time, they grew more prominent and menacing. It was as if the house itself was trying to communicate something sinister. One particularly cold night, around midnight, I was awakened by the sound of shattering glass. Heart pounding, I quietly slipped out of bed and made my way to the living room. The Christmas tree stood in the center, its lights flickering erratically. The decorations were in disarray, ornaments broken, tinsel strewn everywhere. As I approached the tree, a cold draft swept through the room, extinguishing the lights and plunging us into darkness. In that moment, I saw a shadowy figure standing beside the tree. Its form was vague, almost mist-like, but there was an undeniable presence that sent chills down my spine. I froze, unable to move or call out. The figure remained for what felt like an eternity before dissipating into the darkness. I rushed back to bed, my mind racing with fear and confusion. The following days only intensified the eerie atmosphere. Doors would slam shut on their own. Footsteps echoed through empty hallways, and unexplained whispers filled the night. Emily began to experience vivid nightmares, visions of children lost in the snow and a woman draped in black, her eyes hollow with anger. Our children, too, spoke of seeing ghostly apparitions playing in the garden and hearing voices calling their names. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved into the history of our new home. What I found was horrifying. A decade ago, on Christmas night, the house had been the scene of a gruesome murder. A family of 5 had been brutally slain during a holiday celebration, their lives extinguished in a fit of rage that the town had quickly swept under the rug. No one had spoken publicly about the tragedy, and over time, the memory had faded into local lore. Armed with this knowledge, the strange occurrences took on a new, terrifying dimension. It became clear that the spirits of the murdered family were trapped within the walls of our home, unable to find peace. Their presence was restless, their sorrow and anger manifesting in the disturbances we experienced. The Christmas season, a time of joy and togetherness, had become a haunting reminder of their untimely deaths. One Christmas Eve, as we prepared for our annual dinner, the house seemed to hold its breath. The air was thick with tension, and an oppressive silence settled over us. Suddenly, the front door burst open, and a gust of icy wind swept through the room. The lights flickered violently, and the temperature plummeted. I felt an invisible force pinning me against the wall, rendering me immobile. Emily, sensing something was terribly wrong, tried to free me, but the force held strong. In the midst of the chaos, the shadowy figure appeared once more, this time more defined. It was the woman from Emily's nightmares, her face twisted in anguish and rage. She raised her hand, pointing directly at us, her eyes burning with an otherworldly light. Desperate to protect my family, I mustered all my strength and shouted, demanding her to leave us in peace. To my astonishment, the room began to calm, the oppressive energy lifted, and the temperature returned to normal. The shadowy figure faded, leaving us alone in the quiet room. Exhausted but relieved, we embraced each other, grateful to have survived the night. The following morning, the disturbances ceased, the decorations remained intact, and no more shadows appeared in our photographs. It was as if the spirits had finally found the closure they needed. We continued to live in the house, though the memories of that harrowing Christmas night remained etched in our minds. Over the years, the house became a place of resilience and healing for our family. We learned to coexist with the lingering presence, honoring the memories of those who had suffered before us. Each Christmas, we added a small tribute to the fallen family, a gesture of respect and acknowledgement of their tragic past. Looking back, I realized that our experience taught us invaluable lessons about empathy, forgiveness, and the importance of understanding the stories that lie beneath the surface of every home. The house on Maple Street, once a symbol of fear and unease, became a testament to the strength of family bonds and the enduring power of love to overcome even the darkest of shadows. This Christmas, as we decorate our tree and gather around it each night, I can't help but feel a deep connection to the past. The house may still hold its secrets, but we have learned to embrace them, finding peace in the harmony between our present and the echoes of those who came before us. And in doing so, we have transformed a haunted house into a true home, where every light shines a little brighter, dispelling the darkness and welcoming the spirit of Christmas with open hearts. Story number 2. The Frosted Sentinel. I've always believed that small towns hold secrets like snowflakes, each unique, intricate, and quietly concealed, nestled in the heart of rural Vermont. Our town of Wyndham Falls was the epitome of winter charm. Snow blanketed the streets from late November until the first whispers of spring, transforming our community into a picturesque postcard. But that December, something twisted beneath the pristine surface, something that would forever chill the warmth of our holiday spirits. It started innocently enough. My neighbor, Mr. Thompson, an elderly widower with a penchant for storytelling, decided to build the grandest snowman the town had ever seen, standing nearly 7 feet tall, with a top hat, a bright red scarf, and coal eyes that seemed to gleam with life. His creation quickly became the talk of the neighborhood. Children marveled at it during the day, tossing snowballs in friendly jest, while adults admired the craftsmanship over steaming mugs of cocoa. "It's a masterpiece, Tom," Mr. Thompson boasted, patting the snowman's rounded belly one afternoon. "A symbol of winter joy." I smiled, watching as he added the final touches. A broom in one stick hand and a carrot nose that protruded proudly. Little did we know, the snowman would soon transcend its frosty existence. That night, as the town settled into a serene slumber under a moonlit sky, strange noises echoed through the crisp air. It began with a soft crunching sound, like footsteps on fresh snow. I dismissed it at first, attributing it to the wind or perhaps a stray animal. But as midnight approached, the noises grew louder, more deliberate. I awoke to the sound of shattering glass, heart pounding. I reached for my phone, the screen barely illuminating the darkness of my bedroom. A neighbor's panicked call crackled through the speaker, reporting that Mr. Thompson's snowman had moved. My mind raced. Snowmen don't move. Rushing outside, the night air bit at my cheeks, sharp with fear. The street was eerily silent, the only illumination coming from the flickering porch lights. I approached Mr. Thompson's yard cautiously, eyes scanning the area. There, in the soft glow of a street lamp, stood the snowman, unchanged in appearance, yet unmistakably upright and unmoving. "Tom, are you all right?" I called, my voice wavering. No response. I circled the snowman, noticing something odd. Fresh footprints surrounded it, large, human-like prints, pressing into the snow, leading away from the yard and disappearing into the darkness of the adjacent woods. The snow beneath the snowman's feet was unnaturally slushy, as if something had been moving beneath it, causing it to melt from the bottom up. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, the footprints had vanished, leaving only the damp, melting snow as evidence. Detective Harris, a pragmatic man with little patience for superstition, dismissed the incident as a prank. Perhaps some kids decided to bring Mr. Thompson's snowman to life for a laugh, he suggested, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. Days passed without incident, and Wyndham Falls began to return to its peaceful routine. But the unease lingered, a persistent chill that couldn't be shaken. Then, on the second night, the snowman was gone. Mr. Thompson was frantic, claiming he saw it walk away, but there was no trace left behind, no footprints, no signs of struggle, just a melting pile of snow where his masterpiece once stood. I visited Mr. Thompson, finding him shivering on his porch, eyes hollow with fear. "I knew something was wrong," he whispered. "That snowman, it wasn't just snow and coal, it was something else." We decided to investigate the snowman's disappearance ourselves. Armed with flashlights and a sense of dread, we retraced the supposed path the snowman took into the woods. The forest was dense, the trees heavy with snow, creating an oppressive silence that pressed in on us from all sides. After hours of searching, we stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin, half hidden by overgrown pines. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and decay. As we approached, a faint, flickering light emanated from within. Heartbeats quickened as we drew nearer, the temperature dropping noticeably. Inside, the cabin was cluttered with remnants of past lives, broken furniture, faded photographs, and dusty books. But what caught our attention was the sight in the center of the room. A large, lifelike snowman, identical to Mr. Thompson's creation, standing beside a stone hearth that still held the remnants of a long-dead fire. "This can't be real," I muttered, stepping closer. The snowman's coal eyes seemed to gleam with a malevolent intelligence, and its carrot nose twitched slightly, as if sensing our presence. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, plunging us into darkness. The temperature plummeted further, our breaths visible in the icy air. A low, guttural growl echoed through the room, sending shivers down our spines. "We need to leave," Mr. Thompson urged, grabbing my arm. But as we turned to flee, the snowman moved. His twig-like arms reached out, grasping at the air, and the room seemed to distort around us. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, and whispers filled the space, voices from the past echoing our deepest fears. Panic set in as we struggled against the invisible force holding us. The snowman advanced, his presence overwhelming, embodying the very essence of winter's darkness. I could feel the weight of forgotten tragedies pressing down on us, the cabin becoming a nexus of restless spirits tied to the snowman's existence. In a desperate bid for freedom, I remembered the old tales Mr. Thompson used to tell, stories of spirits bound to objects, unable to move on without closure. "Maybe we need to give it what it wants," I suggested, my voice barely a whisper. Gathering our courage, we approached the hearth, noticing an old, tattered journal lying on the mantel. Flipping through its pages, we discovered it belonged to a man named Elias Grayson, who had lived in the cabin over a century ago. The entries detailed his descent into madness, obsessed with creating the perfect snowman to honor his lost family. But tragedy struck one harsh winter when a blizzard claimed the lives of his wife and children, leaving Elias broken and vengeful. His final entry was a frantic plea for forgiveness, a desperate attempt to bind his spirit to the snowman in hopes of never being forgotten. "Forgive me," it read, "for I cannot let go. Let my creation stand as a sentinel against the cold, a guardian of our memories." Understanding dawned on me. The snowman was more than just a snow sculpture. It was Elias's last act, a vessel for his lingering sorrow and rage. We need to help him move on, I said, feeling the weight of our responsibility. Reciting a passage from the journal, we offered our own apologies for disturbing his creation and assured him that his family's memories would be cherished. The room seemed to respond, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the snowman began to shimmer, its form becoming translucent. A gentle warmth filled the cabin, replacing the bitter cold. The snowman's coal eyes softened, and the carrot nose ceased its twitching. "Thank you," a voice echoed, no longer menacing but filled with profound sadness. The snowman slowly disintegrated into sparkling snowflakes, swirling around us before fading into the night. The door swung open, allowing us to escape the cabin's grasp, back in the safety of our homes. The events of that night felt both surreal and liberating. Mr. Thompson and I shared a silent understanding. Our town had been touched by something beyond explanation, but together, we had brought peace to restless spirits. Spring eventually arrived in Wyndham Falls, melting away the remnants of winter's grip. The snowman was never rebuilt, but its memory lingered as a reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead. Each year, as the first snowflakes began to fall, we honored Elias Grayson with a simple gesture, a lantern lit in his memory, symbolizing our collective promise to remember and respect the stories etched into the very fabric of our town. Looking back, I realized that Wyndham Falls is more than just a collection of homes and streets. It's a tapestry of lives intertwined with the seasons, each thread holding its own tale of love, loss, and longing. The frosted sentinel, as we came to call the snowman, stood as a testament to the enduring power of memory and the importance of facing our fears to find peace. In the quiet moments of winter, when the world is hushed under a blanket of snow, I often find myself reflecting on that December night. The lessons learned from Elias's story resonate deeply, reminding us that even in the coldest, darkest times, there is always a flicker of light, a chance to mend what was broken and to embrace the warmth of community and understanding. And so, as each snowflake falls, unique and fleeting, I'm reminded that every story, no matter how frozen in time, has the potential to thaw hearts and bridge the gap between the past and the present. Wyndham Falls continues to thrive, its secrets safely nestled within the snow, guarded by the memories of those who came before us, ensuring that the frosted sentinel remains a guardian of our shared history, forever watching over our cherished town. Story number 3. The Whispering Doll. I never believed in curses or haunted objects. As a practical person, I always sought logical explanations for the unexplainable. But that belief shattered the night I brought home an old doll from the Christmas market. It was early December in our small town of Maplewood, a place where everyone knew each other, and traditions ran deep. The annual Christmas market was the highlight of the season, a festive gathering filled with twinkling lights, joyful music, and countless stalls offering everything from handmade ornaments to delectable treats. This year, I decided to surprise my daughter, Emily, with a unique gift, a vintage doll that caught my eye among the myriad of trinkets. The doll was exquisite, with porcelain skin, deep blue eyes that seemed almost lifelike, and curly auburn hair framing her delicate face. She wore a Victorian-style dress, slightly faded but still elegant, with intricate lace detailing. The vendor, an elderly woman with kind eyes, assured me that the doll was one of a kind, a treasured piece from her late grandmother's collection. "She has a story," the vendor whispered, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "Take good care of her." I laughed softly, dismissing the comment as a sales tactic. "I'm sure she'll bring a lot of joy to Emily." When we got home, Emily's eyes lit up as she saw the doll. "She's beautiful. Daddy, can I name her Lily?" "Of course, sweetheart," I replied, feeling a warm sense of satisfaction. That night, after tucking Emily into bed, I placed Lily on her dresser, admiring the way the soft light from the bedside lamp highlighted the doll's features. I never imagined that this seemingly innocent act would mark the beginning of something terrifying. It started subtly. Around midnight, faint whispers echoed through the house, barely audible above the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. At first, I thought it was the wind or perhaps the house settling. But the whispers persisted, growing slightly louder each night, always coming from Emily's room. One evening, I decided to investigate. Quietly, I approached her bedroom door, pressing my ear against it. The whispers were clearer now, indistinct words that sent a chill down my spine. Summoning my courage, I slowly opened the door. Emily was fast asleep, her chest rising and falling peacefully. But there, at the foot of her bed, stood Lily. The doll's porcelain face was twisted into a sinister grin, her blue eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. My heart raced as I stared in disbelief. "Lily," I whispered, my voice trembling. The doll remained silent, but the atmosphere in the room felt heavy, oppressive. I reached out to touch her, but my hand met cold air. Panicked, I pulled back, and the doll disappeared, leaving only the lingering sense of dread. The following day, I mentioned the incident to Emily, who shook her head in confusion. "I didn't see anything, Daddy." Lily was right where I left her. Determined to find a rational explanation, I decided to research the doll. I returned to the Christmas market the next day, hoping to find the vendor and learn more about Lily's origins. But the market had long since packed up, and the vendor was nowhere to be found. Frustrated, I visited the local library, poring over old records and newspaper archives. After hours of searching, I stumbled upon an article from 30 years ago about a tragic incident involving a doll eerily similar to Lily. A young girl named Clara had died under mysterious circumstances during the holiday season, and her grieving mother had created a doll in her likeness to keep her memory alive. Rumors swirled that Clara's spirit was restless, unable to move on, and that the doll was her vessel. A chill ran down my spine as I read the details. Could Lily be more than just a doll? That night, the whispers returned, louder and more urgent. I entered Emily's room, watching as Lily stood motionless, her grin widening unnaturally. Suddenly, the room grew icy cold, my breath visible in the frigid air. Emily sat up in bed, her eyes wide with fear. "Daddy, the doll. She's smiling again," she whispered. I nodded, trying to maintain composure. "Stay calm, Emily. We'll figure this out." Over the next few nights, the disturbances escalated. Objects in Emily's room moved on their own. Shadows danced along the walls, and the whispers turned into audible voices, chanting incoherently. Sleep became elusive for both of us. The once cozy room now a chamber of nightmares. Desperate for answers, I sought the help of Mrs. Henderson, the town's librarian and a reputed medium. Her home was filled with books on the supernatural, crystals, and various artifacts meant to ward off evil spirits. When I explained our situation, she listened intently, her eyes thoughtful. "It sounds like Clara's spirit is attached to the doll," she concluded after a moment. "We need to perform a cleansing ritual to release her." That evening, Mrs. Henderson arrived, bringing with her an assortment of candles, sage, and holy water. We gathered in Emily's room, the air thick with tension. Mrs. Henderson began to chant softly, the words unfamiliar but soothing. She walked around the room, sprinkling sage and lighting candles to purify the space. As the ritual progressed, the atmosphere shifted, the oppressive cold lifted, and the whispers became faint, almost imperceptible. Lily stood silently, her presence no longer menacing but still undeniably there. "We need to communicate with her," Mrs. Henderson said, her voice steady. "Clara, if you're here, please let us help you find peace." The room fell silent, the only sound the flickering of candle flames. Suddenly, Lily's head tilted slightly, her eyes meeting mine. A soft, sorrowful whisper filled the room. "Help me." Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized the depth of Clara's pain. "We want to help you," Clara, please let us. Mrs. Henderson continued the ritual, her voice rising in intensity. The air seemed to shimmer, and a gentle warmth enveloped the room. Lily's figure began to glow, the sinister grin softening into a peaceful expression. Thank you, the voice echoed, now filled with gratitude. I can finally rest. With those final words, the doll dissolved into a cascade of sparkling light, leaving behind only the scent of pine and the soft glow of the candles. The room felt lighter, the lingering fear replaced by a sense of closure. In the days that followed, peace returned to our home. The whispers ceased, and Lily remained a beautiful, lifeless doll, no longer a vessel for restless spirits. Emily slept soundly, her smiles genuine once more. Reflecting on the experience, I realized how fragile the boundary between the living and the dead truly is. Clara's story was a poignant reminder of the enduring bonds of love and the importance of letting go. By acknowledging her pain and offering our help, we had not only freed her but also healed a wound that had festered for decades. Each Christmas since then, we've kept a small lantern by Emily's bed, a symbol of our promise to remember and honor those who cannot. The market is bustling again, filled with joy and laughter. But now I carry with me a deeper understanding of the magic and mystery that surrounds us. Sometimes, late at night, I catch a glimpse of a soft glow emanating from Emily's room, a comforting reminder that even in darkness, there is light, and in those moments, I am grateful for the strength of family and the compassion that bridges the gap between worlds. Story number 4. The Mailman's Curse. I've always found solace in routine. As a mail carrier in the quiet village of Ravenswood, nestled in the rolling hills of England, my days followed a comforting pattern. Each morning, I set out with my bag of letters, greeting familiar faces and traversing winding roads that meandered through snow-dusted landscapes in winter. But nothing could have prepared me for the eerie events that unfolded one fateful Christmas Eve, forever altering my perception of the ordinary and plunging me into the depths of the supernatural. Ravenswood was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and secrets were as rare as a warm winter's day. Our village was picturesque, with cobblestone streets lined by charming cottages adorned with twinkling Christmas lights. Yet, behind the facade of festive cheer lay an abandoned house at the end of Hawthorne Lane. Shrouded in mystery and whispered rumors, locals spoke of its grim history, a place where shadows seemed to linger long after the sun had set. It was December 24th, a night thick with anticipation and the scent of pine from the towering Christmas tree in the village square. As I made my rounds, the air was crisp, each breath visible in the chilly dusk. My final delivery was the old Whitaker residence, an imposing Victorian structure that had stood empty for years. The current owner had inherited the property but never set foot inside, leaving it to decay under nature's relentless grip. As I approached the house, the wind howled through the skeletal trees, and the sound of distant bells echoed faintly, creating an unsettling harmony with the night's stillness. The gate creaked open as I pushed it, the gravel crunching under my boots. I rang the doorbell, a worn-out fixture that hadn't seen much use. To my surprise, there was no response. The silence inside was heavy, almost oppressive. Deciding to leave the package on the doorstep, I reached into my bag and placed the parcel carefully before turning to leave. That's when I noticed it, a figure standing in the shadows, partially illuminated by the flickering porch light. At first glance, it was just a man, clad in a heavy coat, his face obscured by the brim of a weathered hat. But something about him felt off, an unnatural stillness that sent a shiver down my spine. "Hello," I called out, my voice betraying a hint of unease. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it began to move, slowly, deliberately, toward me. My instincts screamed to run, but my legs felt rooted to the spot. As he drew closer, the details became clearer. He was a mailman, much like myself, but his uniform was tattered, the fabric worn and faded. A large mailbag hung heavily over his shoulder, and his eyes, though partially hidden, held a vacant, haunted gaze. "Can I help you?" I managed to ask, trying to keep my voice steady. He stopped mere feet away, the distance closing unnaturally fast despite his limp gait. Without warning, the sound of bells filled the air, a jarring, discordant clang that seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere at once. The ringing was relentless, echoing through the night and vibrating in my bones. Panic surged through me, and I turned to flee, but my feet felt like lead. The bells intensified, the sound melding into a cacophony that drowned out my thoughts. The mailman reached out a skeletal hand, his fingers elongated and sharp, like claws. I could feel the cold emanating from his presence, a chill that penetrated deeper than the winter air. "Why are you here?" I managed to gasp, my heart pounding in my chest. The apparition didn't speak. Instead, it lifted its arm, pointing toward the abandoned house. The direction made no sense to me. I had just left, and now he was indicating I stay. The bells grew louder, each ring a hammer blow against my sanity, summoning every ounce of courage. I forced myself to move, turning back toward the house. The figure followed, the distance between us closing with every agonizing second. As I stepped onto the porch, the temperature plummeted, my breath turning to frost in the air. The door, despite being ajar, seemed to resist my push, creaking open with a reluctant groan. Inside, the house was cloaked in darkness, the only light coming from the moon filtering through cracked windows. The air was thick with dust, each step stirring up motes that danced in the pale light. I felt an inexplicable urge to follow the mailman, to uncover the secrets that bound him to this forsaken place. The halls were narrow, lined with decaying wallpaper and furniture draped in white sheets. The eerie silence was punctuated only by the persistent ringing of the bells, now seeming to emanate from the very walls. As I ventured deeper, I felt a presence watching me, the mailman's eyes following my every move. I reached a grand staircase, its steps groaning under my weight as I ascended. At the top, a dimly lit corridor stretched before me, doors on either side leading to forgotten rooms. The mailman led me toward the end of the hall, stopping before a heavy oak door. Without hesitation, I pushed it open, revealing a room bathed in an unnatural glow. In the center stood a figure draped in shadows, a spectral form that seemed to ripple and distort. The mailman floated beside it, both entities intertwined in a silent dance of torment. The figure turned toward me, and I recognized it as the missing mailman, Thomas Hartley, who had vanished on Christmas Eve years ago. "Thomas," I whispered, disbelief clouding my voice. His eyes met mine, hollow and sorrowful. The bells ceased, replaced by a profound silence that pressed in on all sides. He extended a hand, his expression pleading. "You must help us," he murmured, his voice a mere breath. Confusion and fear warred within me. "Help who? What happened to you?" Thomas gestured to the figure behind him, a woman in Victorian attire, her face etched with grief. "We are trapped, bound by the curse of that night. Only someone with a pure heart can break it." I swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. "How? What curse?" The room began to shift, images flashing before my eyes, flames consuming the house, screams piercing the night, a desperate struggle as I watched helplessly. The memory was not mine, but it felt all too real, as if I had lived it. "The night you delivered the package, something went terribly wrong. A fire broke out, claiming lives and leaving us restless. Our souls are bound to this place, unable to find peace. You have the chance to set us free, to end our suffering," Thomas explained, his voice now filled with urgency. Determined to help, I asked, "What do I need to do?" Thomas pointed to the fireplace, now ablaze with spectral flames. "You must retrieve the letter that started it all, the one that was never delivered. It holds the key to our release." I glanced at the hearth, where a charred envelope lay amidst the ashes. Approaching cautiously, I picked it up, feeling a surge of energy pulse through me. The letter was brittle, the ink faded but legible. To whom it may concern. I regret to inform you that the property at Hawthorne Lane must be vacated immediately. There have been unforeseen circumstances that require your prompt attention. Failure to comply will result in severe consequences. Sincerely, Thomas Hartley. The letter was addressed to the residents who had perished in the fire, warning them to leave the house. It was a tragic oversight, the final delivery never made, leaving their souls trapped in limbo. Understanding dawned on me. I need to ensure this letter is delivered, to honor Thomas's last wishes and release their spirits. With Thomas's guidance, I carried the letter back to the front door, the mailbag now glowing with an ethereal light. As I stepped outside, the night felt different. The oppressive atmosphere lifted. The mailman's figure faded, replaced by a serene calm. I walked to the local post office, the building warmly lit against the cold night. Inside, I found an elderly clerk who had served the village for decades. "I need to deliver this," I said, handing over the charred envelope. The clerk examined it, a look of recognition crossing his face. "This was lost many years ago. Thank you for bringing closure." As I left the post office, the bells no longer rang, and the night was peaceful. Ravenswood felt lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. I returned to the abandoned house one last time, standing before it with a sense of accomplishment and relief. The house seemed to breathe a sigh of contentment, the shadows receding and the windows reflecting the peaceful night. I turned to leave, but a soft glow lingered around Hawthorne Lane, a testament to the lives that once filled it and the peace that had been restored. That Christmas Eve remains etched in my memory, a night where the line between the living and the dead blurred, and I was thrust into a role I never imagined. It taught me that even in the darkest times, hope and compassion can bridge the gap between worlds, offering redemption to those who have been forgotten. Now, each year, as the snow blankets Ravenswood and the Christmas lights twinkle, I feel a connection to the past, a reminder of the night I delivered more than just mail. I delivered peace to restless souls. The curse of the mailman was broken, not by magic, but by the simple act of fulfilling a duty left unfinished. As I continue my rounds, the memory serves as a guiding light, reminding me that every letter, every package, carries a story, a piece of someone's heart, and sometimes, the most profound deliveries are those that reach beyond the tangible, touching the very essence of our shared humanity. Story number 5. The Dark Night of December in Alaska. December in Alaska is a time when darkness reigns supreme. The sun barely graces the horizon, lingering just long enough to cast eerie shadows before plunging the landscape into an endless night. For my family and me, living in the remote town of Nightfall Ridge, this was both a beauty and a curse. But nothing could have prepared us for the events that unfolded during one particularly harsh December. I'm James Mitchell, a 42-year-old father of 2, married to Sarah, a nurse, and father to our 10-year-old daughter, Emily, and 7-year-old son, Ethan. We moved to Nightfall Ridge seeking tranquility and a closer connection to nature. Far from the hustle and bustle of city life, the cabin we purchased was nestled deep in the woods, surrounded by towering pines and blanketed in pristine snow. It was the perfect winter retreat, or so we thought. It began on December 12th. The first signs were minor, flickering lights and the occasional power surge. We chalked it up to the old wiring and the severe weather conditions typical of the region. However, by December 20th, the power outages became more frequent and prolonged, sometimes lasting for days on end. The isolation that once felt peaceful now loomed ominously. One particularly frigid evening, the temperature plummeted to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. A relentless blizzard raged outside, the howling wind battering our cabin with ferocity. The power had been out for 3 days straight, and our only source of light was the dim glow of battery-operated candles and the flickering flames of the fireplace. Sarah was tending to the fire in the living room, trying to keep our home warm and habitable. Emily and Ethan were huddled together on the rug, reading by candlelight. I was in the kitchen, rationing our dwindling food supplies and ensuring we had enough to last through the worst of the storm. As midnight approached, palpable tension filled the air. The silence was deafening, broken only by the creaking of the cabin and the relentless storm outside. Suddenly, the temperature seemed to drop even further, a bone-chilling cold that seeped into my bones. I glanced up at the security camera we had installed, a precaution we never thought we'd need in such a remote area. The camera's feed was grainy and distorted, but I could make out the outline of the backyard. My heart skipped a beat when I saw a towering figure standing motionless near our cabin's entrance. It was impossibly tall, with limbs that seemed too long, and eyes that glowed a sinister red. The creature stood there, unwavering, as if waiting for something. I called out to Sarah, who looked up from the fire with a mixture of fear and confusion. "Did you see that?" She nodded slowly, her eyes wide with terror. "There's something outside." We approached the window cautiously, peering into the darkness. The blizzard had obscured our view, but the red eyes were unmistakable, piercing through the thick snowstorm. Emily clutched Ethan's hand tightly, sensing the fear that gripped her parents. "We need to stay calm," I whispered, trying to mask the panic in my voice. "It's probably just a deer or something." But deep down, I knew it was something far more sinister. The presence we felt wasn't just a figment of our imagination. It was real, and it was watching us. As the night wore on, the creature remained outside, its presence growing more menacing with each passing hour. The security camera's battery was nearly dead, and the feed became increasingly unstable. Every time I glanced at it, the figure seemed closer, its red eyes burning into my soul. By the early hours of the morning, the power had been restored, albeit briefly. The sudden surge brought a flicker of relief, but it was short-lived. The lights flickered back on, but the creature had vanished. We breathed a collective sigh of relief, believing the nightmare was over. However, our relief was fleeting. The following night, the power failed again, plunging us back into darkness. The cycle of fear began anew, and we realized that whatever haunted our cabin wasn't bound by the interruptions in electricity. It was something that thrived in the darkness, something that fed off our fear and isolation. Desperate for answers, I decided to delve into the history of Nightfall Ridge. The town was small, with a population that had dwindled over the years as younger generations moved away. What I discovered was a chilling tale dating back to the early 1900s. A series of mysterious disappearances had plagued the area, all occurring on the darkest nights of the year. The most notable case was that of a mailman named Harold Finch, who vanished on December 24, 1912, while delivering mail to a remote homestead. Local legend spoke of a curse placed upon the town, a malevolent force that emerged during the longest nights to claim the souls of those who dared to reside there. Many dismissed these stories as mere folklore, but the evidence before me suggested there was truth to the tales. Determined to protect my family, I reached out to the town's historian, Mrs. Evelyn Harper, an elderly woman with a wealth of knowledge about Nightfall Ridge's past. She agreed to meet us at her home, a quaint cottage filled with dusty books and artifacts. Upon our arrival, Mrs. Harper listened intently as I recounted the events we had been experiencing. She nodded solemnly, her eyes reflecting the weight of the town's dark history. "The creature you describe is known as the Shadow Harbinger," she explained. "It's said to be the spirit of Harold Finch, the mailman who was cursed for delivering an unsent letter. The letter was never delivered to the homestead, leading to the family's demise and trapping Finch's soul in an eternal vigil. Every year, during the darkest nights, he seeks to complete his duty, ensuring that the messages of the past reach their intended recipients." "We need to find that letter," I said, determination hardening my voice. "If Finch's spirit is bound by this task, completing it might release him and end the curse." Mrs. Harper handed me an old, brittle map of Nightfall Ridge. marking the location of the original homestead. It's a treacherous journey, especially in these conditions, she warned. But if you're willing to try, I can provide you with the tools you'll need. With renewed hope, I prepared for the journey. Sarah packed warm clothing and supplies, while Emily and Ethan stayed close, fearful yet resilient. As dawn broke, we set out into the blinding snowstorm, guided by the map and Mrs. Harper's instructions. The path to the homestead was fraught with peril. The blizzard raged on, visibility reduced to mere feet. The cold was unbearable, each gust of wind a reminder of the malevolent force we were up against. After hours of trudging through the snow, we finally reached the abandoned homestead, a dilapidated structure, its windows shattered and walls covered in frost. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of decay. We searched the rooms meticulously, hoping to find the lost letter. In the main living area, beneath a heavy layer of snow that had blown in through a broken window, we discovered an old, tattered envelope. It was addressed to the homestead's patriarch. Dated December 24th, 1912. With trembling hands, I opened the letter. The contents were heartbreaking, a simple apology and a promise to return, cut short by an unforeseen tragedy. It was a message of regret, never delivered, never read. As I read the final words, a sudden silence enveloped the homestead. The temperature plummeted, and the shadows seemed to come alive. The figure of Harold Finch appeared before us, his red eyes burning with a mix of sorrow and determination. "You found it," he whispered, his voice echoing through the room. "Now, my duty is fulfilled." With the letter delivered, the oppressive presence lifted, and the homestead seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Finch's spirit faded into the light, a peaceful expression replacing his once haunted gaze. We returned to our cabin, the storm finally abating as if acknowledging the end of the curse. The power remained stable, and the nights were no longer filled with fear. Our experience had bonded us in ways we never imagined, a testament to the strength of family and the power of facing our darkest fears together. As the days grew longer and the sun began to peak above the horizon, bringing an end to the endless night, I often found myself reflecting on that harrowing December. Nightfall Ridge remained a place of beauty and tranquility, its dark secrets finally laid to rest. But the lessons learned during those bleak nights stayed with us, a reminder that sometimes the past reaches out to guide us, ensuring that the stories left untold find their resolution. Story number 6. The Death of Santa Claus. December has always been a month of magic for me. Growing up in the small town of Pinebrook, the holiday season was the highlight of the year. The annual Christmas festival at Evergreen Amusement Park was a tradition my family and I cherished. The park transformed into a winter wonderland, complete with twinkling lights, festive music, and, of course, the beloved figure of Santa Claus himself. But that year, everything changed. Michael Turner, a 35-year-old event coordinator responsible for organizing the Christmas festival. My role was to ensure every detail was perfect, from the grand parade to the nightly fireworks. Santa Claus was the star attraction, a role filled by Harold Jenkins, a man whose jolly demeanor and hearty laugh made him a favorite among children and adults alike. Harold had been portraying Santa for over a decade, and his sudden death on Christmas Eve left our community in shock. It was supposed to be the grand finale of the festival, a heartwarming scene where Santa would distribute gifts to children gathered around the towering Christmas tree. On that fateful night, as Harold made his way to the stage, something went horribly wrong. Midway through his speech, he collapsed, the red suit turning from vibrant to ghastly as he lay lifeless on the stage. The crowd erupted in panic. Emergency services were summoned, and the festival was abruptly canceled. In the weeks that followed, Pinebrook struggled to come to terms with Harold's untimely death. Rumors swirled about the cause. Some blamed the excessive heat from the stage lights. Others whispered about the stress of maintaining the Santa persona year after year. But the truth was far more sinister. A few months after Harold's death, strange occurrences began to plague Evergreen Amusement Park. It started with whispers, faint, indistinct voices heard during the quiet hours of the night. Staff reported seeing shadows flitting through the park, and visitors spoke of feeling an overwhelming sense of dread despite the festive decorations. Most disturbingly, numerous eyewitnesses claimed to see Santa Claus roaming the park outside of his scheduled appearances, even when no one was in the costume. One chilly December evening, I decided to investigate these unsettling reports. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of duty, I ventured into the park after closing hours. The air was thick with the scent of pine and the remnants of holiday treats, but an eerie silence hung over the grounds. As I walked past the merry-go-round and the Ferris wheel, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Felt as though I was being watched. I reached the stage area, now deserted and bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached, the memory of Harold's lifeless body replaying in my mind. Suddenly, a chill wind swept through the park, extinguishing my flashlight and plunging me into darkness. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to stay calm, pulling out my phone for light. In the beam of my phone's flashlight, I saw him, Santa Claus, standing at the edge of the stage. His red suit was pristine, his beard immaculately groomed, and his eyes sparkled with the same warmth Harold had always shown. But something was off. His smile was too wide, his presence too unnaturally still. "Santa," I called out, my voice trembling. He didn't respond. Instead, he began to walk toward me, his steps slow and deliberate. As he moved, the temperature seemed to drop, my breath visible in the frigid air. I took a step back, but my legs felt heavy, rooted to the spot. "You don't belong here," I whispered, the words barely audible. Santa stopped, tilting his head as if trying to understand. Then, his expression shifted, the warmth in his eyes replaced by an icy emptiness. His smile twisted into a grotesque grin, revealing unnaturally sharp teeth. "Why did you leave me?" he hissed, his voice a haunting echo of Harold's laughter. Before I could react, the stage lights flickered to life, illuminating the scene in harsh, white light. The facade of festivity crumbled, revealing the dark truth beneath. The stage was no longer a place of joy but a prison of sorrow and anger. Shadows danced around us, and the whispers grew louder, filling the night with their mournful cries. I stumbled backward, my mind racing to comprehend the apparition before me. Memories of Harold's dedication and the pressure he must have felt flooded my thoughts. Could his spirit be trapped, forced to relive the night of his death forever? Desperate to end the nightmare, I remembered the letters Harold had written, apologies and messages of hope he had never delivered. Buried deep in my office, I found one such letter, addressed to the children he had entertained for years. The words were heartfelt, expressing his love for the community and his desire to make every Christmas special. Clutching the letter, I approached Santa, who now loomed over me with malevolent intent. "Please," I begged, "you deserve peace. Let us help you." For a moment, the creature hesitated, the anger in his eyes wavering. I extended the letter toward him, my hands shaking. "This is your message. Let the children know you love them. Let go." The air grew heavy as he reached out, his skeletal hand gripping the paper. A surge of energy pulsed through me as the letter was lifted and carried toward the sky, dissolving into a cascade of snowflakes. The shadows around us began to fade, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Santa staggered, his form flickering like a candle in the wind. His eyes softened, the rage melting away to reveal the sorrow beneath. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice now gentle and filled with gratitude. With those final words, he vanished, leaving me alone on the stage. The lights dimmed, and the park returned to its peaceful state. As if nothing had happened, exhausted but relieved, I made my way back to my cabin, the weight of the night lifting from my shoulders. In the days that followed, the strange occurrences ceased. The whispers were gone, and the sightings of Santa Claus became nothing more than ghost stories shared around fireplaces. Pinebrook began to heal, the memory of Harold's tragic end transforming into a legend of redemption and peace. Each Christmas since then, I honor Harold's memory by ensuring every detail of the festival is perfect, celebrating the joy and love that the season brings. Evergreen Amusement Park stands as a beacon of hope, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of compassion. But sometimes, on the darkest nights of December, when the wind howls just right, I swear I can hear the faint jingle of bells and see a flicker of red in the shadows. It serves as a reminder that even in death, love and dedication can transcend the boundaries between the living and the dead, ensuring that the spirit of Christmas remains eternal. Story number 7. The Hellbound Train. December in Germany is a time when the nights stretch long and the cold seeps into every crevice of your being. I always found solace in the rhythmic clatter of trains, the predictable journey from one station to another, a stark contrast to the chaos of daily life. But that night, December 14th, 2023, my routine took a sinister turn that would forever alter my perception of reality. I had just finished a late shift at the local factory in Munich. Exhausted and eager to get home, I decided to take the last train back to my small apartment. The platform was nearly deserted, the cold biting through my coat as I waited for the train to arrive. The clock struck midnight when the train finally pulled into the station, its headlights piercing the darkness like the eyes of a beast awakening from slumber. As I boarded the carriage, the conductor gave me a nod, his expression unreadable behind the brim of his cap. The train was eerily quiet, save for the soft hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of paper as passengers settled into their seats. I chose a window seat near the back, the dim light casting long shadows across the compartment. The journey began smoothly, the train gliding through the snowy landscape with ease. I pulled out my phone, checking the time and scrolling through messages, trying to distract myself from the chill that seemed to penetrate deeper than usual. Hours passed, or perhaps it was minutes. Time felt distorted in the confined space of the carriage. Without warning, the train jolted violently, throwing me against the window. The lights flickered and dimmed before plunging the entire carriage into darkness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled for my phone to use as a flashlight, the beam cutting through the blackness like a knife. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice echoing in the empty space. No response. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant sound of metal grinding against metal. I stood up, my heart pounding, and approached the door, only to find it locked from the outside. Desperation clawed at me as I pounded on the door, shouting for help, but it remained stubbornly closed. Minutes turned into what felt like an eternity as I sat back down, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Then, through the darkness, I heard it, a faint whispering, growing louder with each passing second. It was indistinct, but the tone was menacing, filled with malice. My skin crawled as I strained to listen, the whispers weaving around me like icy fingers. Suddenly, the train screeched to a halt. The lights snapped back on, revealing an empty carriage bathed in an unnatural, cold light. The temperature had dropped precipitously, my breath visible in the air. I glanced around, but there was no sign of anyone else. The other seats were empty, the passengers gone without a trace. Heart hammering, I made my way to the front of the train, hoping to find an explanation or perhaps another passenger who could help. As I approached the conductor's compartment, the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. I pressed my ear against the door, trying to discern any words. "Leave now, before it's too late." A chill ran down my spine as I pulled away, the message clear despite the lack of audible clarity. I turned to leave, but the train began to move again, this time in the opposite direction. Panic set in as I realized I was trapped on a ghostly loop. The train caught between worlds, determined to uncover the truth. I decided to explore the rest of the carriage, moving through the dimly lit compartments. I found them empty, the seats untouched as if time itself had frozen. The whispering followed me, growing louder and more urgent, filling my mind with a sense of impending doom. In one of the last carriages, I stumbled upon a door that hadn't been there before. It was old and ornate, the wood darkened with age, and intricate carvings snaking along its surface. My curiosity overcame my fear as I reached out to touch the handle, feeling an inexplicable pull to open it. The door creaked open to reveal a small, dimly lit room. Inside stood a single chair, facing a grand fireplace that was cold and lifeless. On the mantel above, a dusty portrait hung, a man in a conductor's uniform, his eyes seeming to follow my every move. The room felt heavy with sorrow and despair, the air thick with the weight of untold stories. As I approached the fireplace, the temperature plummeted further, my breath coming in sharp gasps. The whispers intensified, now clearly forming words that sent shivers down my spine. "Deliver the message." Suddenly, the portrait flickered, the man's eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. He spoke without moving his lips, his voice echoing in my mind. "You must fulfill your duty. Release us from this eternal journey." Confusion and fear warred within me as I tried to understand. What duty? What message needed delivering? The realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. The train wasn't just a physical journey, but a spiritual one, a conduit for lost souls seeking closure. I needed to help them find peace, to release them from their torment, determined to do whatever it took. I searched the room for clues. Underneath the fireplace, I found a hidden compartment containing a stack of old letters, each addressed to various destinations that no longer existed. These were the messages that had never been delivered, the final words left unsaid. Understanding dawned on me. To free the souls trapped on the train, I needed to ensure each letter reached its intended recipient. The task seemed insurmountable, but I couldn't abandon them to their eternal suffering. I gathered the letters and returned to the main carriage, the whispers guiding me as I moved from one compartment to another. Each time I delivered a letter, the oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly, the whispers fading into a peaceful silence. It was a painstaking process, but with each letter delivered, the train felt lighter, as if the spirits were finally finding their way. Hours passed, or perhaps it was days. Time lost all meaning in the spectral realm of the train. Finally, with the last letter delivered, a profound silence enveloped the entire carriage. The temperature returned to normal, and the once ominous whispers ceased, replaced by a serene stillness. The conductor's portrait glowed one final time, a smile replacing the stern expression. "Thank you." His voice echoed in my mind. "Now, you may return." The train began to move once more, this time in a steady, purposeful direction, the compartments filled with warm light, the ghostly presence dissipating as if released from a long-held burden. I felt a sense of accomplishment and relief wash over me as the train chugged smoothly through the snowy landscape. As dawn broke, the train approached a familiar station, the one I had boarded from. The platform was quiet, the first light of morning casting a golden glow on the tracks. The doors opened, and I stepped off, the cold night replaced by the gentle warmth of the new day. Looking back, the train had vanished, leaving no trace of its existence. The events of that night felt surreal, a haunting memory that lingered in my mind. I returned home, forever changed by the journey I had undertaken, the lives I had touched, and the souls I had helped find peace. Each December since then, I avoid taking the late train, respecting the boundary between the living and the dead. But sometimes, on the coldest nights, I swear I can hear the faint echo of a conductor's whistle, a reminder of the night I rode the hellbound train and helped it find its way to the afterlife. Epilogue.